Welcome back to Tightwad Workshop. When Mrs. Tightwad and I moved into this house 7 years ago, I made this quick temporary ramp for the back deck to help with moving the heavy furniture. Since then it's been used for all kinds of wheeled cargo carriers. It was only meant to last for a year, so I definitely got my money's worth from it. Yesterday I replaced the other two backyard ramps with hardwood versions, so today we're going to be constructing the last one. As you can see here, the pavers slope away at an angle towards this drain, so the top of the ramp doesn't sit level with the edge of the deck. That slope is steeper on the house's other deck, and I needed to add this wedge to its ramp to correct the angles. But because the difference is only small on this one, I'm just going to make a simple rectangular ramp. I'll start by cutting 3 pieces of this hardwood framing timber to 800mm, or about 31.5 inches long. Now normally I'd be going old school with a handsaw, but this is 50-year-old Australian hardwood, so it really lives up to its name. Next we need to rest the 3 rails against the edge of the deck, and since the deck is topped with these thin merbau planks, we'll need a similar plank under the front edge of the rails to make the angles work out correctly. Now I'll use a ruler to mark the deck edge line across the rail ends. I'll mark all 3 of them in the same way. Now we can use a piece of rail offcut to mark the taper that we need on the bottom edge of each rail. Then I can take the rails to the table saw and cut them out. Always take your time and think about what you're doing when you're using the table saw. I try to never put my hands near that blade unless the machine's stopped and unplugged. Now we can measure the width of our new ramp and cut 8 pieces of decking for its top. Next I can put the first deck board in position, then mark and drill a hole for the first screw. I'm quite impressed at how I completely missed my mark there. I'm using this fancy drill bit that drills the pilot hole and the countersink in a single operation. Now we can attach the board using a galvanised screw. Then after we've fitted the next 3 screws, we can now measure the diagonals to make sure we've got a nice square cornered frame. If one diagonal is longer than the other, just squeeze the frame in a little bit to correct it. Once you're happy with the frame, fit your second screws in each corner. This will lock the frame into position. Now we can lay out the other 6 decking boards, then adjust them until the spacing's the same between each pair. I might just chock that tapered edge first. Once you're happy with the spacing, use a straight edge to mark the remaining screw locations. Then we can drill and fit a single screw into each board, the same as before. Because we only put 1 screw in each board, we can still adjust the spacing at the other end if it moved while we were working on it. Now we can mark, drill and screw this end of the boards, using 2 screws in each board this time. And finally, we can add the 6 missing screws from the other end. Now we can measure and mark the location for the middle rail, then attach it with a screw at each end. We'll fill in the remaining screws in the same way as before. Now I can lift up the ramp and cut off those couple of screws that are showing through the thin end of the rails. Next I'll put the ramp in position against the deck and mark the length of the first leg. There's a little bit of guesswork involved in making that second mark. Now I'll connect the 2 dots and cut the leg out on the table saw. I'm attaching the legs inside the side rails with long screws. The legs will also press against the underside of the deck boards here for extra support. The old ramp was level on the right side and low on the left. I've adjusted the new one to be level in the middle with a little bump at each side. It's nice and stable, so now we can move on to painting it. The decking timbers are second hand and they've been finished with oil in the past, so we're going to have to use an oil-based primer. The rails have never been painted, so they really soak up the primer like a sponge. The decking timbers use a little bit less. Now we can move on to applying the top coat paint. Well, I don't know about you, but I think that's a nice improvement on the old one. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Tightwad Workshop is filmed in front of a live studio audience.